people can see where I've arrived, how well I'm doing, how amazing my life has become. We're shapeshifters. We're not the only ones. The clownfish, in the male's late years, the clownfish turns female. When I first came out, I thought I was going to be free. Eventually, you cage yourself with that. I know on my personal journey, what once freed me wound up caging me. I had holes in my soul.
Your trauma and struggles will always come back to bite you. Last week, Keith Caputo, best known as the lead vocalist and founding member of the New York City alternative rock band Life of Agony, announced via his Instagram that he is officially detransitioning from living as a trans woman since 2011.
I'm off of hormones 6-7 years now, and this January 25, my surgery has been booked to remove my fake breasts, and I will be lovingly living in my divine male self. I've cured my gender dysphoria.
He has also recently been very vocal about the implications of gender ideology, claiming that it is a threat to biological women. The 50-year-old is now requesting people call him by the name Keith, which is the original name he was born with. Keith has come a long way since seemingly fully buying in to the ideology in the early days of his transition.
I guess, culture that you want to be a part of is to be like a public advocate for trans issues.
Well, I think just by being me, I already am one.
And Keith's journey, plus his detransition, has sparked a debate into both the efficacy of transition and the underlying reasons behind it. In fact, he stated that having gender dysphoria or some sort of body dysmorphism does not make your self-biology magically change. Big surprise there. He says that after undergoing years of trauma therapy, he's come to certain realizations and healed himself, but that maybe the world is not yet ready to hear this conversation. His recent announcement has come with a lot of support from people, but of course, outrage from the trans activist community. In fact, the LGBTQ+ news publication, which we all love, Pink News, condemned his words, describing them as a set of thunderous right-wing posts about so-called gender ideology. The myth of gender ideology. You all know what we're talking about here. And perhaps if you've seen some of my recent interviews with detransitioners Ariel D. Salvatore and Roxanne Reed, both having detransitioned after over a decade of physical transition and social transition, this poses a question of, are we going to see more and more long-term transitioners now detransitioning? How many have been led down the wrong path? And how can doctors effectively diagnose who is really trans and who is not? Even those admitting they had lifelong gender dysphoria stemming way back from childhood and then getting the official diagnosis and treatment from the medical industry. And stories like these make me wonder, are we reaching peak trans? Hey everyone, it is Jack. Welcome back to my channel, or if you are new, hello. Well, if you enjoy my content, please make sure you like this video, subscribe, leave a comment down below, let me know what you think. I have a feeling that 2025, can't believe I'm saying that number, is going to be my year to 50k subscribers. Who knows, maybe more. And I have some wonderful Christmas presents for you if you like my channel, because I have a week off work and this week I'm going to be bringing you more content, more juicy videos, so stay tuned. And if you want to support my work, there's a few ways you can do this. There's a one-time donation via PayPal link. You can also join my YouTube member community to get early access to videos, as well as the Jack Jewell Uncut episodes of my podcast and TikToksic. Or even better, head on over to Substack, join my community there where you can talk to me and get bonus footage seen nowhere else. Also, I've decided I'm going to do a December promotion, so you can get 25% off a yearly subscription to my Substack. So if you are interested in paying a relatively modest amount for 12 months of Jack Jewell Uncut, link is in the description. Hope to see you there. And now let's get back into the story of Keith Caputo. Well, Keith transitioned in 2011, expressing his lifelong desires to become a girl and grappling with debilitating gender dysphoria. In a 2017 interview with Rolling Stones, Keith said, "I wanted to come out. I couldn't bear pretending to be a boy anymore in this fucking world. I just wanted to let her out. It was fucking killing me. He then talks about how he saw a gender therapist who quite quickly facilitated his transition through discussing a few options. And in this time, he was also really going through it with drug addiction to both coke and OxyContin. So straight away, it makes you wonder, was this the ideal candidate for transition? Were perhaps more things going on, considering he had drug addictions and obvious trauma from his childhood? And then we wonder, why did Keith suffer from gender dysphoria? What created this? Well, like I mentioned, he details an extremely difficult childhood with a mother who herself was addicted to drugs and unfortunately passed away from an overdose. This followed by his father abandoning him, but later coming around, and Keith expresses that he had to act like a parent to his father, saying, "I was mothering him through his whole life." And this makes me wonder, from several of the therapists I have spoken to that treat trans-identifying people, they say that they see a pattern of male transitioners, at least male to female, wanting to sort of adopt the persona of their mother or become a version of their mother. And perhaps this is because they want to recreate the safety of a parent who was never actually there for them, or perhaps a parent who they have lost. And it seems like both of these things are relevant in the case of Keith. And Keith also seems to not have had any positive male role models in his life. So I talked about his dad before, but he also had an abusive grandfather. And this shows another pattern of the transition from male to female in being surrounded by such negative images of masculinity that it may lead to the person simply wanting to reject the man that they are. In fact, Keith even mentioned in an interview that the toxic masculinity she was once surrounded by was literally killing her. He also talks about some memories he had as a kid with this kind of cross-gender fantasy, gender non-conforming behavior. And he recalls one particular moment with his grandmother where she used to dress me up to go to school. "But why can't you dress me in girls' clothes?" Keith asked. His grandmother did not respond well, saying, "Your grandfather will fucking kill you." And again, this makes me think of when a child has a desire to be gender non-conforming and wear clothes of the opposite sex, behave in ways that are typical of the opposite sex, the toys, etc., all the usual gendered stereotypes. If we try and subdue that in a child and tell them there's something wrong with you because you want to do that, and with all the abuse on top of that, it does make sense why this may lead to them concluding, perhaps I was supposed to be the other sex, instead of just allowing themselves to express this feminine desire while still remaining grounded in biological reality. And off Keith went on his life, which was very difficult. He was still struggling with all these feelings well into adulthood. But another pattern we see is this idea of transition doesn't seem to come about until they learn about it. And we see this sort of indoctrination happening. Keith describes how he saw many other celebrities come out as transgender. He gives examples like Laverne Cox, Caitlyn Jenner, Janet Mock, and this really planted the seed in his mind. Maybe this is something I can do and it will relieve my discomfort. And he mentions one specific trans person, Lara Jane Grace, who actually assisted him in understanding the process of getting hormones, getting treatment, etc. So again, you wonder, were the times different and this treatment wasn't available? Would his gender dysphoria have resolved earlier? Would this even have occurred to him to transition? And did transitioning actually worsen the suffering? Once Keith decided to come out as a woman, he got a lot of support from his band members and lots of praise. What's interesting though is that he seemed to be in full trans activist mode in this time, buying into all the typical ideas and talking points we hear, including even talking about the concept of the transgender child.
I have many fans that are married with their children that have trans children, and I'm directing them with things I don't really talk about on Twitter because, I don't need to prove to the world how much I'm doing for my community.
During this time, Keith actually said that things worked for him and his life improved.
People can see where I've arrived, how well I'm doing, how amazing my life has become.
So it seemed to be the case that this was the treatment Keith needed. And another thing we talk about with transition is sometimes there is a honeymoon phase or period of several years where people think, I'm cured, I'm now living my truth, before some of the side effects and consequences of their decisions seem to run up to them. In fact, Roxanne Reed in our interview said in the first 5 years, she was really all about the testosterone, but then both the physical and social impacts of this drug and the surgeries really caught up with her, and she started to understand that the trade-off just wasn't worth it anymore. Keith also used to refute the fact that gender dysphoria is not in fact a mental illness, describing it vaguely as something much more complex, but similar to a lot of trans activists, we're left none the wiser on what this actually means.
Trans people are sort of being treated like gay people were 50, 60 years ago. They're seeing this as mental illness, strictly as something that can be cured. That you
Well, a
should go through.
dysphoria.
It is dysphoria. I mean, in a sense, but that doesn't mean that you can just go
Not
to a doctor
necessarily.
and... No?
I mean, it all depends on who you are and how you view life. I don't think I never thought of it as a dysphoric. I never thought of it as a crutch. I only thought of it as a crutch because that's what society taught me.
He described the experience as quote unquote so beautiful. Not only are we transitioning ourselves, but the people around you need to transition as well. And this is very telling because a lot of the stuff we see with trans, which is very unlike the gay rights liberation movement, you need society to change their frame of mind and their thinking in order for you to be valid. Whereas for me, obviously, I don't want anyone to threaten me with violence or abuse me, but it doesn't make a difference to me if someone is respectful and does not discriminate against me, but internally thinks that being gay is a sin or doesn't believe that people are actually gay. It really makes no difference to me at all. And I don't need people to use certain words around me. But you can see that Keith was buying into this idea of, now we need to place the burden on society because I have this suffering, I've made this decision, and I've made all of these connections, this constellation, gender galaxy in my mind, and society needs to get on board with that. Otherwise, I'm not valid as a woman. And when asked about bottom surgery, Keith actually said, the whole penis, I'm okay with that down there. There's more to being a woman than just dresses, makeup, and genitals. But then he doesn't really explain what this is. In fact, he has a bunch of gobbledygook sort of twaddle and seems to have believed in the saying there is a quote-unquote subconscious sex, which is this concept we are presented as the sexed soul, this innate sense of gender identity, which scientifically simply cannot be proven. And isn't it odd that you suffer with gender dysphoria and desperately want to be a woman, but then have no problem with one of the very defining features of what it means to be a man, which is male genitalia. And even though he talks about this subconscious sex, the only way he really demonstrates this to the world is simply growing his hair out and wearing women's clothes, taking hormones, as well as getting a boob job. Must be a very strange experience. Keith was so entrenched in these ideas that he even cites some of the absolutely insane far end of the spectrum reasons behind trans identity, using the clownfish argument.
The human being can change into whatever it wants, and we're shapeshifters. We're not the only ones. The clownfish in the male's late years, the clownfish turns female. Mm-hmm. The male seahorse fertilizes itself and bears its young and takes care of the young. There's swallowtail butterfly. There's all different kinds of butterfly species that go from male to female. I mean, this is nature. This is the chaos of nature.
But in fact, this is one of the easiest ones to debunk because, newsflash, we're not clownfish. Birds are animals. Birds can fly. But does that mean we can fly? No. And it's the same for any species that can somehow morph from one sex to the other. Unfortunately, guys, humans can't do that. And it's better that we recognize that we're not clownfish. We're not in Finding Nemo. Dory can fuck off.
You got a problem, buddy? Huh? Do you? Want a piece of me?
Ellen DeGeneres. And to accept our material reality instead. Trans activists typically talk about their truth, their lived reality. Keith funnily describes how he views his sex and society views their sex.
But in our Western world, we've been so derailed from the beauty of our own nature, the beauty of our own sex, of our bodies, that most people are not celebrating the self. They're not honoring the self. They're not honoring the limitlessness of self's journey and where we can take it. There are no rules on this planet. They try to enforce these imaginary rules, but there are no rules. This is a wild, wild, wild fucking world, man. And it's getting more and more wild.
But notice just the hypocrisy in this is people aren't celebrating their sex, whereas in actual fact, Most people who live in the reality of their sex, you could argue, are celebrating it, whereas Keith seems to be the one who's denying his sex, but somehow inverting this argument to make it look like he's the one with the more profound sense of gender. In fact, we see this sort of superiority complex with trans activists, that they've somehow transcended the normal sex binary concepts in human mammals, which most of us can recognize to be true, and embraced this new gendered soul. And then the rest of us are just poor, cis people, ignorant people, uneducated people who simply just don't understand. And perhaps we're the ones who are missing out. Yet, Keith is actually critical of religion.
The world knows it's being driven in an unnatural direction, and this is why there's so much political tension, religious tension. It's not working. These systems are not working for the people anymore. The religious paradigm hasn't worked in fucking 500 years. All religion has been doing is creating fear, oppression, more hatred.
Separation.
Not seeming to recognize that his ideas were in fact comparable to a religion, a neo-religion, and that is the religion of gender ideology. He also seemed to have little grasp on the implications gender ideology and transgenderism can have on women.
You know, with the pedophile bullshit, more child trafficking. This is what goes on in the institution. This is the problems our world leaders should be focusing on. Not preventing a lady like me from, you want me coming into the guy's room?
I don't care.
Well, I asked the wrong question to the wrong person, but anyway, I mean, you know.
Wouldn't bother me. I don't care.
He seems to be unaware that he simply looks like a man with long hair, and this somehow grants him access to the female restroom. And what's interesting here is that we have 4 men sort of debating the safety of women's spaces, simply disregarding it and finding it so easy to conclude, oh yeah, this makes complete sense, just go in there.
Well, I fucking care. I'm born anatomically a man, but that's the whole point of what is a man.
So that was the old Keith, who seemed to be fully on board with the ideology, very little understanding of, why do I feel this way? Why do I have gender dysphoria? Except for the concept of a subconscious sex. And I immediately, like the science brain I have, wanted to discover what kind of type of trans person is Keith? Is he a homosexual transsexual? Is he an autogynephile? Or perhaps is he neither? And here I'm referring to the Blanchardian typology, where trans women are typically either homosexual, transsexual, gay men who often went through lots of homophobic abuse and bullying for being highly gender non-conforming, feeling ostracized because they're not one of the girls, but definitely not one of the guys, and also finding it extremely difficult to date because most gay men are into masculine men, and therefore this immense mental distress gets focused on the body, and they conclude perhaps I was actually born in the wrong body. Then we have the autogynephile who has a sexual attraction at the idea of himself being a woman. And I'm no stranger to this whole thing. I think it's quite easy to spot A from B. Sure, there may be outlier edge cases or maybe some new types of trans that we're seeing emerging because of social media. But back in this time, I think it's pretty confident to say that we could largely put people into one of these 2 buckets. And the first sort of telling sign of this is the homosexual transsexuals tend to be very naturally feminine. In fact, they tend to pass better, at least if not fully physically, more socially. They typically have much more feminine voices and seem to be able to adopt the stereotypes of a woman with a lot more grace and class than the autogynephile. Whereas in the case of Keith, he's very obviously very masculine. I don't see him putting any effort into be stereotypical female in behavior, in his voice, in his mannerisms.
And let's be real, all these lawmakers that are enforcing all these fucked up laws on all these people, they're the first people that are getting their dick sucked by a transsexual or a gay guy.
It all just seems to be about wearing the clothes of a female and getting the breasts. And we see this a lot in autogynephiles because their dysphoria, their distress is all about this desire to want to be a woman. It's not necessarily about, well, I already am so feminine and society is rejecting me, therefore I need to change my body to feel comfortable in society. So it's very important we understand the distinction between these 2 types. And when you look at past photos of Keith, there was no sign of effemininity. He just looked looked full-blown male, and I know that that doesn't mean he wasn't suffering, but it's definitely one of the signs. Like I mentioned before with his history of male role models, it's quite typical that autogynephiles experience autoandrophobia, where they detest their male body, their male being, and this can often be brought about from having such poor examples of males in their life, or at least I suspect it might be. I'm not a scientist, remember. Autogynephiles are typically straight, so attracted to women, or sometimes describe themselves as bisexual. So this is another kind of peculiar reason why a straight man may want to become a woman. And he does talk about dating women in the past. He actually ran into trouble when his female partners weren't exactly happy with his desires of wanting to get mani-pedis and Brazilian wax. He pondered that most female partners saw it as merely a quote-unquote bed thing, a sexual fantasy kind of thing in their own mind. But here, I feel like he wasn't telling the full story behind this, where my assumption is he often ran into trouble when wanting to play out his cross-sex fantasies in the bedroom and naturally making his female partners uncomfortable by this. And this is also typical of autogynephilia, where they most desire to be women in the sexual role and to be treated like a woman, to be dominated, to wear women's clothing. And when he came out, he described himself as a quote-unquote fucking sissy. And sissy is another word that the AGPs typically use. And now we are all too cognizant, unfortunately, of the sissy hypnoporn, which seems to be either instigating or developing these inner desires in young men to become quote-unquote women because of a lot of this porn that they're consuming. He also described his experience of going on hormones like a second puberty, saying that he was like a quote-unquote 15-year-old girl. I'm so goofy. 1 minute I'll be really happy and giddy and laughing and joking. And again, with the gay type of trans women, they seem to not really focus on this obsession with girlhood and female puberty. Unless you are this person, of course. The autogynephiles typically fantasize about the bodily functions and bodily experience of women rather than just the societal factors. So naturally, it might have been quite euphoric, to use a term, or exciting for him to imagine himself being a 15-year-old girl, which is kind of disturbing, and going through puberty. However, post-transition, Keith suddenly expressed interest in men, saying, "I hope to marry a man just like one of the boys in the band, because they're very loyal." This may seem like it refutes the fact that he's an autogynephile and maybe he's gay, but in actual fact, with autogynephilia, we typically see men chasing womanhood and becoming more and more obsessed. So while it might just start with wearing some clothes in the bedroom, then it leads to wanting to fully transition. And once they have that, maybe they realize, well, it's not what I thought it was. So to further validate their womanhood, they start liking the idea of being with a man because it makes them feel like a straight woman. And in the bedroom, they can even better enact these fantasies. And this is something that Ray Blanchard himself described as pseudo-bisexuality, or something the AGP community these days are referring to as meta-attraction. And I just want to say that everything I've stated here are simply speculations and wonderings for myself on perhaps is this a presentation of autogynephilia? I'm not 100% sure on his sexuality either, but this is just the information I could find. So it is interesting to see these patterns and pick up on these little nuggets throughout things he said to form a bigger picture and hypothesis. Perhaps one that Keith even seems to know himself but has not been fully public with yet. So how did Keith go from being the sissy he thought he was to now being fully a detransitioner and embracing his masculine reality? Well, as time went on, he seemed to become more critical of gender ideology. Last year, he posted a video to his YouTube channel titled "Calling Out Fake Trans Ideologies." And this is at a point that he seemed to still claim the identity of a trans woman, but also seemed to fully accept his biological reality, which we see in some prominent transsexuals like Blair White and Book Angel.
Here's the difference between me and all the people selling lies on social media and television. Yeah, I'm a trans woman. Yes. You know what that means? I'm a biological boy, biological man. Okay. Psychologically, I suffer. It's a very complex and layered phenomenon.
But he also seemed to be getting the fact that the specifically transgender ideology is causing harm.
When the system and other trans people start violating the rights of other people in the name of inclusivity, I gotta call bullshit.
And here he still seems to have the desire to want to be a woman. Perhaps is still sort of believing in this concept of a sex soul phenomenon going on in his brain.
I'm a male mammal, okay? That's the difference. Biological women, are female mammals. That's why I suffer, because my soul feels like it should be in a biological female spacesuit. And it's a phenomenon.
He talked about coming off hormones years ago and stating that the side effects were really difficult to cope with and not at all pleasant.
I was on hormones almost 15, 16, 17 years. I'm not off it. Why? Very dangerous. A lot of side effects that a lot of people don't want to talk about.
He also became critical of the trans women in sports issue.
So why don't you think trans women should be competing against biological women? There's a big difference, dude. Okay? You know how many years it took biological women to have their rights put into place? All the trans people that are competing against biological women, let me just say this. You should all be ashamed of yourselves.
And very funny, he started calling out the bullshit from some of these trans activists wreaking havoc, such as Dylan Mulvaney and Leah Thomas.
And people like Dylan Mulvaney, Leah Thomas, the swimmer, these motherfuckers, they don't speak for me.
But ultimately, it seems like this treatment did not work for Keith, did not seem to ease his suffering long term and resolve his gender dysphoria.
Real human being, I'm really suffering. Hormones didn't change that. Breast surgery didn't change that.
So it poses the question on how efficacious is this treatment, on average for people? Is it just a small percentage who seem to benefit and seem to get lucky? But we don't have good data behind this. We can even see him flirting with the idea of detransition.
And Shaka, I may even just detransition all the way and just go back to living as my male self.
And in this time, Keith seems to be trying to reconcile this cognitive dissonance going on inside his mind, still sort of clinging to the idea of trans, but also recognizing all the pitfalls in the ideology and his journey. We can see he's doing more research and starting to piece things together.
Just trying to understand what my soul is experiencing. And it's heavy and it's deep and it's very layered and it's very complex.
And he doesn't really seem to give zero fucks here. He's very critical of some of the people pushing this ideology.
Especially the men. Especially the guys are speaking up for trans women. You don't even know what the fuck. You're literally a misogynist, dude. You're literally a misogynist.
And how this has become a big political topic, which is clouding our ability to actually figure out what's going on from both the Democrats and the Republicans.
None of you dummy Democrats on the far left, you fucking morons, and the people on the right, and you conservative, all you people wearing political pins, go get your fucking humanity back.
And what is peak trans? Well, this is a concept where someone who previously had believed in the ideology seems to start questioning things and realizing there perhaps is more to this than meets the eye. And in the video he posted last week, Keith seems to understand that he was actually very wrong.
It took many years, a lot of walking through the fire, but I rose above my misunderstandings of my soul. That's a completely different topic and video.
He even hints here at a broader understanding, and I speculate on whether this has anything to do with autogynephilia, as he does seem to have done lots of research, and surely he must have come across this concept at some point. He talks about how he has now accepted his sex and has healed his gender dysphoria.
And I've been existing in a different version of myself, a more healed version of myself. I've done years of trauma work. Honey lamb, I am a man. I always was a man. I can't even find the dysphoria anymore.
So we can obviously see that having diagnosable gender dysphoria is not a one-road path to treatment and solution. You can clearly heal it through psychological work, which seems to be the case for Keith. He talks about all the hate and pushback he's received for simply telling the truth.
You think you throwing shade at me and all this garbage, and motherfuckers want to keep calling me anti-trans and a racist. You people, and a fucking Nazi. You people are fucking stupid, man.
Which is not surprising from the trans activists who want to quell any sense of truth and reality from getting out there so they can continue to spread their propaganda and capture the institutions which they have done a very good job at too good. He now really seems to recognize the harm being done to kids and pushes back on this vehemently.
I absolutely refuse to buy into the psychotic narrative that children need hormones and irreversible surgeries. Let me just tell you this, man. If you bring your child and put them on puberty blockers and irreversible surgeries and all this bullshit, you are literally stripping them their rights, their adult rights to make decisions for themselves.
Another thing with peak trans and people coming out of this seems to be the fact that they really have let go of this victimhood complex.
You know, I don't live in victimhood the way they teach this world.
Which, of course, the trans activist community are all too happy to keep their ideologues in, which is just a very disempowering frame of mind, convincing people that they're at risk of suicide and murder, which is not kind at all for the people who are supposed to be loyal to your cult. Keith talks about how he got therapy at the time before his transition.
I went to 3 years of fucking gender therapy before any hormone was administered in my body.
These days, there's no more therapy. You could take your little 3-4-year-old toddler to the clinic and get hormone packages. Whatever happened to therapy?
But this therapy didn't seem to have worked. I wonder, was this mainly just affirmative therapy from a gender therapist? If someone tells a therapist they're gay, then the starting point is, okay, I believe you're gay. Let's work with how you're struggling with that. If we take the same approach to trans identity and the starting point is, oh, you are trans and therefore your life is difficult, this immediately disallows us to have exploratory work. After all, what if you are identifying as trans and believing you need to do this because your life is difficult, rather than the other way around? When Keith talks about getting off hormones, we can see that this honeymoon phase, which a lot of trans people seem to go through, did seem to wear off.
When I first came out, I thought it was going to be this, I was going to be free. Eventually, you cage yourself with that. I know on my personal journey, what once freed me wound up caging me.
And with autogynephilia, they tend to chase the next version of womanhood they can. Eventually, they run out of all options and realize, this is actually not making me happy. Keith talks about how he hated himself.
No wonder why I didn't know who I was, or I had trouble with my identity in the body. I didn't love myself. I didn't love where I came from. I had holes in my soul.
And when you hate yourself and want to be someone else, then obviously the idea of recreating yourself, becoming the other sex, becoming a new person, and adopting a new name is tempting. And this doesn't just happen with trans. We see people do this with, they move country and they get a new job and they think, okay, I can just run away from my trauma. And this may work at first, but your trauma and struggles will always come back to bite you. And now Keith seems to be free.
And I'll be physically completely detransitioned in 2025. I can't wait. I feel so free.
He even is talking about the link between his mother and his trauma.
I have womb trauma. I never knew my mom. My mom died at 22. Again, why I grew up so fucked up with no identity.
He seems to be piecing things together. He's now ditched the clownfish idea, and from his Instagram, he also seems to have gone on some broader political journey and has become quite critical and skeptical of vaccines following a lot of the talking points of RFK Jr. Now, I don't know much about that, but this seems to happen as well with a lot of detransitioners, is not only do they detransition from the ideology, but they also seem to question their whole political affiliation with commonly the left, and sometimes go fully in the other direction, being very right-wing and being a conspiracy theorist, but eventually that side kind of wears off too, and then they find a happy middle. So whether that's the case for Keith or not, who knows? So how was Keith treated since he came out? Well, of course, Pink News, like I mentioned earlier, hates these people. They hate detransitioners who are honest about their experience and how they've been harmed by the medical community, which is a shame because they are supposed to look out for LGBT people, but only if they agree with them, right? They are treating him as the apostate who has committed treason and betrayed trans people through simply being honest. They quote a fan from Facebook who said, "R.I.P. Mina Caputo. You were a fucking icon." So they love the trans version, but they hate the real one. This is big, and now you're going to throw trans kids and drag queens under the bus on your way out? Don't remember him saying anything about drag queens. That's odd. Like, go for it. Detransition. That's your journey. But this is messed up. My heart hurts so much over this. This shows the underlying doubts in these trans activist ideology because they can't bear to see someone who's realized, actually, this is all bullshit. So face up to it, guys. And Pink News have dug their heels in, saying despite what Caputo says, gender dysphoria cannot be cured and it is not indicative of trans identities, according to experts. So this makes zero sense. I mean, he got diagnosed with gender dysphoria. He says that he's cured, that he fully accepts his sex. So obviously it is cured. And now, of course, the whole concept of trans is you don't have to have dysphoria to be trans. So it's pretty much a moot point anyway. Trans people get to live their truth and only they know their identities. But if you're someone who says, I actually cured my dysphoria, then you're wrong. Then your truth is no longer the truth. They talk about false claims and pseudosciences. Funny how they use that term when everything they argue is based on pseudoscience, such as rapid onset gender dysphoria and social contagion theories, widely debunked even by the original theorists. Well, yeah, that's because the original theorists were talking out of their ass. So there you have it, guys. Keith has now detransitioned and he seems to be doing well. He seems to be happy and I really wish the best for him. I'm sorry that he had to go through all of this suffering, but I'm glad that he's come out the other side. I can clearly be a strong voice pushing back against this ideology, pushing back against harm being done to women, gay people and children. And for that reason, I'm very thankful for him. But now, are we going to see more long-term transitioners, perhaps celebrities detransitioning and realizing this didn't make me as happy as I thought it would? And again, I like to have a middle ground here, so I'm not on the side right now of ban this for everyone. I do recognize there are some people who've done this and seem to be very happy with the decision, at least for now. But the one thing that sort of is telling about this is those who seem to be happy with it, people like Blair White, people like Alexis Blake and Buck Angel, their starting point was, I am a man or I am a woman, but I'm going to do this so that I look different. People maybe treat me a slightly different way. I can move through the world differently. I can attract different partners. So these seem to be the type of transsexuals that have more success because at least their starting point is more grounded. This now seems to be a very small percentage of trans people. So will more people be emboldened to take the leap? Well, guys, please let me know what you think of in the comments. Are we going to see more people doing this? Did you like the video? And with that said, I will see you soon for a new video. Bye.